this right now. Okay, I see there's a few of you missing here because there's only, I think, 5 spectators in the Lichess, and I can see there's at least 10 of you here on the Zoom. Guys, just follow your instructions carefully, please, and jump onto the Lichess. I'm not going to wait too much longer. I want to get started with the lesson. All right, firstly, I want to congratulate most of you that are here because I've been watching you guys. You've been practicing, and that's exactly what I asked you to do. I think if you guys follow that chess program, we said that we want to try and do roughly, I want to say 10 games a week. I mean, obviously, if you do more is going to be better. But you want to try and do a minimum of 10 games a week. This will keep the brain ticking over. And this is obviously what practicing is all about. Practice makes perfect. We all know this. But you need to put in the time. You need to put in the effort. And you guys will see the rewards, I guarantee you. Okay, this example that I've got here, this first one, is very similar to the example that I posted in the chess program for you guys. And it's a pretty standard king and pawn endgame, just the same as the example that you had in the program. We are 1 pawn up. And I think this is the perfect illustration that 1 pawn up is enough for you to win the game, okay? It's absolutely enough for you to win the game. That is all you need. 1 pawn up can result in you promoting that pawn and result in you winning the game. It's just that simple. So if we remember what we've previously discussed, we know that in the king and pawn endgame, the first mission is always to activate the king. So generally, we want to centralize the king. Remember the 4 squares in the center. This is the center of the board. We've got e4, d4, e5, and d5. And we want to try and get the king to these squares. From here, we can decide maybe the king goes this way, maybe the king goes this way, depending on what targets present themselves and how things go. So it makes sense. First move, we start our path to the center. Either we can go this way, we can go this way. I suppose alternatively, you could probably go f4 and run the king towards the center like this. You've got a couple options. King f1, let's do the same story with black. I think a lot of you might be tempted to just run, just to run this pawn up the board. But then I think the king is going to catch that pawn, and that's not really going to work out. Okay, let's just see someone else being admitted. Okay, welcome. Please mute that microphone. So black does the same. All right, and we can see that white's king has made it to the center first. This is a moral victory. Definitely the first blood goes to white here. White's managed to gain central control, and this is going to help him when it comes to marching the pawns up the board. Okay, so black just goes here, creates opposition, and he covers these squares and stops the white king from going further forward. We start marching. So the first mission, get the king to the center. Centralize the king, get the king as far up the board as possible. Second mission, create a passed pawn. I think we all know what a passed pawn is, but I'm going to remind you guys, it's a pawn that has no opposition pawns in its path to the promotion square. Okay, and right now there are no passed pawns on this board. This pawn looks passed, but it still has to contend with this pawn on b7. That's going to be an issue. So at this stage, no passed pawns. Okay, all right. I see a lot of people joining. Guys, please mute those microphones, and please try and be on time for these lessons. Thank you. So it's a tricky position for black. He's got to contend with this c pawn rolling down the board. Let's go g5 here. Black might try to create something on the king side, but it's difficult for them. It's 3-on-3 here, which means there's no overlap. going to be almost impossible for them to create a passed pawn. Let's get rolling. C5 check, king C6. Now we really want to get B5 in. You can see the king's controlling that square though. So we've got two options. We can either go A4, which will support this move. Alternatively, perhaps king C4, which will work as well. There's also potential to maybe go this way. It all seems a bit risky. It looks like it's going to be a big race. I'll go this way. I'll munch these pawns. But black will come this way and probably munch these pawns. Let's keep it simple. King C4. We want to go B5. Black goes A6. White goes A4, threatening B5. It's not a great deal black can do about that. Let's go with, I was thinking about B5 here potentially as an option. I'm sure you guys will love this one. Always a favorite amongst the juniors. This is en passant. We'll get more into that going forward. So I don't think B5 is probably the best move that black can play here. Let's rather stick with something like H6. B5, A takes B, check. King's got to get out of check. He's got to go back. This has opened up some key squares for my king, and I march right in. This is great news. I can either go this way, or I can continue with my passed pawn. Let's do that. So C6, B takes C, B takes C. And finally, the passed pawn has been created. Okay, now this brings us to an important point. Generally, this first passed pawn, this is not going to be the pawn that you promote with. This passed pawn generally serves as a distraction, first and foremost. Okay? Because it's quite easy for them to stop this pawn. And we're just going to use it to pull this king away and allow our king to cruise this side and pick up the pawns. We're going to see how that goes. So king C7. We can probably just do it right away. We see this king is a little bit offside on C7. He's out of the action. He's not really close to these pawns. Let's go straight in. If king takes C6, there's king takes F5. That's good news for us. And our king will be pretty close to munching here. Let's say black tries to go F4, just to make it more difficult for white to pick up these pawns. Guys, as always, something that we've addressed before, there's a chain of pawns here. The weakness is always at the back, okay? It's not going to help to attack the F4 square. It's too well defended. So whenever there's a chain of pawns, you always want to target the base of the chain or the pawn at the back. Keep your life simple. We could probably just go F6 and then G6, but F5, G6 works just as well. It also stops black from moving the G pawn. Yeah, and now we're basically getting to the end of this game. It's not a great deal that black can do here. Probably has to go G4, King G5, both pawns attacked. Very difficult. Let's say black plays F3. Let's say black plays F3. Then, guys, I'm going to ask you to give me a good continuation for white. Just type your moves here into the chat. So one or two moves should be enough. What you would play as white in this position. I'll give you guys a couple seconds to do that. Type it into the lead chess chat, please. I think that makes it a little bit easier. I don't know if everybody will be able to see the Zoom chat, especially while I'm sharing the screen.
Cut pawn on F3.
Let's keep those microphones muted, please, and rather stick to using the chat. This will also help you with your notation. Cut pawn on F3. It's not exactly the notation that I'd like to see, but a good answer nevertheless. G takes F3 would be correct notation. How would we write that? Well, this is what you would write, or type as it were. G takes F3. which pretty much forces black to do the same. Now, how are we going to pick this pawn up? This pawn looks very vulnerable. Quite excited about how to pick up this pawn. I'm sure that it's can't be too difficult from here. Who's got the move for me? White to play. Let's win this f3 pawn. No one? I'm sure you guys have got this answer. It's not too bad. That's the one. King f4. King g4, so it looks pretty good. But I think if you go king g4, black can go king e4. So correctly, king f4. Guys, you always want to try and use your king to cover or to block the squares from your opponent's king coming into the game. Now this pawn is lost. Not a great deal of opportunity for black here. Maybe king d4, king e6. Either way, it's pretty much game over. Okay, so from here, we just have to march these pawns up the board, making sure to not lose any. We've done these examples before, and as long as you look after the pawns, use the king to support the pawns, it's fairly straightforward. Let's see how that might go. March the pawns together, don't leave one behind, and use the king as support. So you can do it either way, the h pawn or the f pawn. It's pretty easy. Okay, so now we get to this part, and this is now, once you've reached the 6th rank, you're like, okay, I'm basically there. I just need to make sure that I do this correctly, because stalemate is always looming in these positions, and we definitely need to make sure that we take stalemate into consideration and make sure that we do not stalemate our opponent. How do we do that? Well, we make sure that the black king at least has some open squares. So right now they've got f8 and h8. We know that if we play h7, it's a bit of risky business, because once you've played h7, the king goes to h8, and now it's very tricky. I mean, we're in a stalemate position. Black has no moves. There's one move here that can save the day for the white pieces. I'll give you guys, let's say, 30 seconds to find me a critical move that white can play in this position to win the game. And then we'll go back and just see how we can avoid this little situation. It's a good answer from Gabriel. Guys, I want more people getting involved in the chat, please. We don't want Gabriel just doing the answers for you guys all the time. I'm pretty sure the rest of you know the answers as well. King f7 is a fantastic move. Well done, young man. All right, and this allows the king to take on h7. Easy peasy. All right. And we just shuffle the king across, and now it looks like we are straight through. King e7, and this square is defended. This square is defended. There is no way to stop this pawn from promoting, and that's going to be the ball game. Let's go back to this situation where we had this position, king g8. So h7, we said, rather stay away from this move. It's unnecessary, it's complicated, and we try to keep life simple. I think simple chess is good chess. It's a good philosophy. So f7 is a simpler option. If the king goes to h8 now, you can just promote with f8 mate straight away, forces king f8, and now the h-pawn just rolls straight through. h7, h8. You can actually promote both pawns in this example. And from here, a ladder method. I don't really think I need to go into more detail here. You guys all know the ladder method, and we don't need to waste time with that. All right, so that pretty much sums that up. If we go back to the start, you see, I want you guys to start envisioning what could happen in a situation like this. I mean, you're just this lonely one pawn up. But essentially, this game is completely won for white if you understand the principles and you understand what you need to do. Just remember, king and pawn endgame, king first. Activate the king. Your life could be a lot more difficult if you're marching pawns and you allow the enemy king to get into some key squares. So king first, create pass pawn, and that first pass pawn generally serves the distraction, scoop up the rest of the pawns, and win the game. Nice and easy. Let's move on to the next chapter. All right, so what do we have here? Guys, sometimes when you look at a chess position, it can be a little bit confusing. For example, maybe you're not sure which way this pawn is going. You're like, okay, it's still pretty far away from promoting over here, because it's not really immediately clear which way, or maybe the pawn's coming this way. Guys, the best way to identify this is to look at the squares. Okay, so we see 7 and 8 on this side and 1 and 2 at the top. What does that mean? Well, that means white started here and black started here. So this pawn is coming down the board, which means it's 2 squares away from promotion. So we've got a little bit of an interesting battle on our hands here. We got the king and the pawn against the queen. Our king, unfortunately, is far out of the action. If the black king was close, let's say on this square, for instance, e7, it would be pretty straightforward. You could just probably go king d8 and blockade these promotion squares, and things will be pretty easy. All right, but we don't have that situation. We've got the king far away from the pawn, and we need to make a plan to stop this pawn from promoting. So a good rule here is to use the queen and block or blockade the pawn from going forward. So if I could just fly this queen to perhaps c7 or c8, that would be great news. Then the pawn's not going anywhere. The king can't kick the queen out of that square, and then I'm just going to simply use my king and come and help finish off the job. So that's the game plan. That's what we're going to try to achieve. If we do this correctly, it can be really, really simple. If we play the wrong moves, which I'll show you after we've done the correct one, life can actually be quite complicated. So the easiest way to blockade this pawn is probably just to get to c8, because the king is going to be unable to stop you from getting to that square. What's the shortest possible route? I suppose there's a couple of ways in which you could win this position, but let's get some answers in the chat. What's the shortest route to get this queen on h1 to the c8 square? How are we going to do it? The queen needs to find her way to the c8 square. Got raised hands. Guys, the chat room on Lichess, sorry to interrupt there. The chat room on Lichess should be found just under the chapters. There's the top left-hand corner says chapters with members. We've got the chapters, the king and pawn, the queen versus king and pawn. And then directly underneath that, there should be a chat room. It seems that some people are struggling to find the chat room, and that would explain the lack of participation in the chat room. We'll have to investigate this matter. What I'd like you guys to do is come into the studies at any other time really convenient for you guys, and just try and see if you can navigate your way around these things. Learn a little bit more about Lichess and figure these things out. Okay. Okay. What's happening here? All right, let's continue. Queen h3. I see some lines being drawn on the Lichess. I'm not really sure how that's happening. And queen h3, the purpose is to go king c8. Let me just exit this study and I'll pop right back to it. Okay. Let's continue. All right. Guys, if somebody's doing that, please don't do that. I actually can't get rid of it, which is a little bit weird. We'll look into that at a later stage. Thank you. All right, so queen to c8. And as we said, we just block the pawn and stop the pawn from making any progress. I think if you do this, life is very, very simple here. There's not really anything that white can do to remove this queen from the c8 square. So c7 is fairly obvious. White wants to promote this pawn, but there's nothing that they can really do. So the king is now just going to march across, and there'll be then two attackers on the c7 pawn, and that pawn will just simply drop. White obviously will hang around and try and make it as difficult as possible for black, but it's not going to really help. So here, white doing a good job of stopping the king from making progress. A small waiting move forces the king back to this square. King, king, king. Okay, and we've scooped up the pawn. We can do a quick L-shaped method, considering the king is pretty close to the edge. Guys, just a reminder, let's do the L-shape. Force the king into the corner. Should we L-shape in the corner? Absolutely not. I'm pretty sure you guys all know that. And now we just have to fly the king, excuse me, to either one of these squares, which will support the queen for a nice, easy checkmate. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. All right, let's move on to one of our exercises. Guys, also within the program, I've asked you guys to do different pages. I think generally I'm giving you guys one exercise page and one reading page per week. It's very doable. Again, tactics make you sharp. They really help with your calculation, and I want you guys to do that. Feel free to do more. I've posted those books on there for you guys to use. They're all workbooks, so try and use them. If you have any problems, you can always contact us, and we'll do our best to assist you with any of those concerns or problems that you might have. But do the exercises. They are very good for you, I promise. All right, so we've got one here taken from not the exact same book, but the similar series. And we've got, well, the first one we'll do here is white to play and win. There's a little tactic, and this is also going to highlight why tactics are so important. It's just a general game. We can see both players seemingly playing well. It's pretty even. Black's actually one pawn up. So we're basically just entering the start of the end game. You can say the middle game is just closing off. We're entering the end game, and Black's come up with a pawn up. He's also putting a lot of pressure on this b2 pawn, which is not really great news for white. The rook on the second rank is always pretty strong, pretty good, giving white a little bit of trouble. So Black's defenses are a little bit shaky, it has to be said. The back rank's weak, the seventh rank's also a little bit weak. And white has a nice tactical shot in this position, a very strong move that he can play. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to a minute, see if you can find it. A good move for white. A winning move for white, let me say, rather. You can type into the Zoom chat if you are unable to access the Lichess chat. So we have 2 moves. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your input. Try and get involved. It's good for you. Nothing wrong. If you get it wrong, so what? You're going to learn from that. It's definitely, I'm always talking about this, trying to get involved in the process. Don't just sit back there. We've had a couple moves. We've got bishop d4, we've got knight a5, we've had rook f7. Let's look into those options quickly and we'll analyze them the way I'd like you all to analyze moves. So let's start with bishop d4. What's bishop d4 all about? Well, probably looking at defending this pawn and getting in the way of the diagonal. I'd assume black would take this, knight takes, and then it looks like this pawn is dropping in any case. Not a bad move, probably not the best move, safe to say. All right, knight a5 is the next one. Remember, the first thing I always look at with any move is why. What's this move all about? Where's this knight going? What's the plan? What's the story? Okay, I don't really see what the story is. Maybe he wants to target these squares. He wanted to, maybe in conjunction with rook f7. This knight a5 could work quite nicely. I suppose he's getting out of the way, so if rook takes, he can continue with a plan of attack. But with the knight, always keep your eyes on where is the knight going next. Rook f7. Okay, the golden move. It's the correct move. Well spotted, guys. So what makes this move good is not really that it's just attacking the bishop. It's also that it's attacking the a7 pawn. This is a classic example of a double attack where the rook is attacking 2 things at the same time. And as with most double attacks, it's very difficult, or in a lot of cases impossible, to solve both problems. You know, you could say bishop d4 now, but I mean, obviously white's just going to take that bishop and the problems just go on. So we are threatening rook a7 mate. Pretty difficult to stop that. It seems like knight c6 is the most proactive way for, black to defend this square, in which case he's just dropping a bishop. That's the cost of defending his king that he has to pay. Outside of that move, it doesn't really look like there's a great deal because this is happening and he is getting mated on that square. Yeah, pretty much that simple. There's no checks. Taking b2, obviously you're getting mated as well. Not a great deal to talk about further there. Fantastic. Well done to those who participated and got it right. Awesome. Let's move on to our next exercise. Okay, again, it's white to play and win. We've got a nifty little tactic here. Guys, just a reminder, when you're in these positions, all possible takes, all possible checks. Look at what options you have. What can you do in this position? It's again pretty even. Looks like black is again a pawn up. So he's looking to trade some pieces, head off to the end game, and use that pawn in a similar fashion that we used our additional pawn in the first example. We've got a nice answer here from Matthew B. I presume that's from Blommenstein. Nice move. Gabriel follows suit. Knight a7 looks good, guys. You could always add in a little bit more analysis. I think that would be useful. Knight e7 check. The king obviously has to move out of the way. I think that's fairly obvious. And then the black rook will not be defended. A very nice little opportunity presence here. So we can see how tactics can be useful. We could have played many moves in this position, and we might have gone on to play a long game, a long end game. But tactics sneak up in many different positions, and all we can do is try to seize those opportunities that present themselves. So knight e7 check. It's possible that you were thinking even about knight d5. You're like, hey, well, it looks like I'm going to win a pawn here. This is good news. But there's better news. So king h7 or king h8, and now quite simply just rook takes rook. There's no possible square that this king can move to that's going to allow him to defend his rook, which is obviously what he'd be trying to think about. He needs to try and save the rook, and he's unable to do so. So rook takes f8, and that is the end. Guys, the final chapter here is more a practical example than anything. It's more just for fun. I think if you guys have siblings at home or you play chess with your parents or anything like that, you guys can just use this as just a fun game to play. We've got the 8 pawns against the queen. You'd think that that could be close because it's 8 points against 9 points. It's not so close. If black plays correctly with the queen, it can be quite one-sided. Important thing to remember is the double attack, and you scoop up some pawns and you leave white pretty helpless. We can see some examples. We'll play through a few moves here. Let's go e3. Any double attack will do. Remember, double attack is attacking 2 pieces at the same time. So, guys, give me a double attack in the chat. Any double attack will do. Black to play, of course. We've got queen d5. Give me another one. Got queen c2. I presume that's queen c7, which is good. Queen f6. Not quite, because queen f6, unfortunately, one of the squares that you're attacking is f2, and that's defended. So we'll stick with queen d5. I think it's probably the most accurate move that you can play. Then you hit a2 and g2 at the same time. Again, decisions become quite difficult here. Let's go b3. We'll hold the a2 pawn. Queen a5, thank you, Mackenzie. d2 was defended by the king, but you probably would have won the a pawn. Queen g2, hitting h2. We'll run with the h pawn, but it's clear he's not going to get too far. Okay, so h5, queen h5, a4. The key with the pawns is to try and keep them all defended and march them up the board slowly. But like I said, if black plays some good moves, it's very difficult to do that. I think the mistake that a lot of people do is that they don't involve the king. All right, let's see who's got some recommendations here. Give us a move in the chat. You've got to attack the targets. Maybe some way to attack c2 would be good. And then maybe bring the king in. Guys, we've got 1.5 minutes left on this meeting time. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen at that stage. It's very likely that the meeting will just abruptly end as we've reached the time limit on the Zoom. So I'm going to take this opportunity to just remind you guys to please follow and do that chess program that we've posted out for you guys. It's good for you and it will help you to improve your chess, absolutely. The other one is with the last half an hour of our lesson, let's spend some time and play. I think last week most of you did it. I followed most of you. I checked. I saw you guys were playing. I saw you guys played some good games, actually. So you can use this time. You've already allocated this time to chess. So it would make sense to use the last half an hour to play some games here on the Lichess. I think use the 15-minute time controls. Don't try and go too fast because you just won't have enough time to play a proper game. So 15 minutes, roughly, anywhere around there is a good time control for you guys to play. So you do that, and then also just keep trying to play a little bit of chess throughout the course of the week. A little bit of chess every day will be good for you. So let's continue, and let's see what happens with this time. Queen f5 is a good one. I like it because I was actually planning on